So I want to talk a little bit more about the terminology before we go back through these steps. So let's talk about chromosomes, and again, this idea of kind of haploid and diploid a little bit more in detail. So we kind of have this idea of ploidy kind of being the number of sets of DNA in the cell. So the number of sets of chromosomes. And so chromosomes typically vary in length, and that kind of relates to how many genes they carry. So if I have a cell and this has genes 1 through 5, and then our middle chromosome has genes 6 through 9. And then our other chromosome has genes 10 through 12. Simply shorter. How many copies of each gene do I have? How many of you say 1? And that's true. So the reason we can tell that it's 1 is that you just look at how many copies of the number 1 and all are written here. So each number stands for a different gene. And we have one number 1, one number 2, one number 3, so on and so forth. So here we only have 1 copy of each gene. So is this haploid or diploid? How many do you think it's haploid? So that is correct. So we only have 1 copy of each gene, that's haploid. So to have 2 copies, I just need another 1 of all of these chromosomes. So now how many copies of each gene do I have? 2. And so this cell is called diploid. And we can tell that these chromosomes have to line up by length. So, because they wouldn't have the same amount of genetic information on them. So if I did it with these pipe cleaners, this can't carry the same genes as this because this chunk that lines up with the top part of the pipe cleaner is missing. So chromosomes that carry the same genes tend to be the same length. And you can see they carry the genes in the same spaces. So what is the term for these 2 chromosomes that carry the same gene? Homologous. So these are homologous chromosomes. Why don't you talk with your neighbors briefly about what are some similarities and differences between homologous chromosomes? All right, so let's wrap up your discussion. So are these homologous chromosomes that I have up here? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? Does anybody want to share why they think yes or no? Chromosomes are the same length, then that indicates that they carry the same genes. So this actually is in fact a homologous pair of chromosomes, but we can see that since one's pink and one's purple, there are some differences. So what are some differences between our homologous chromosomes? Yes? Right, so they might not have the same allele. And we're going to move into genetic expression next week, so it's great to begin to tie this, because the reason we go right through mitosis and meiosis first is so you can see how the chromosomes are moving during cell division, and then kind of relate that to how that impacts genetic expression in the offspring that are produced. So our homologous chromosomes have the same genes in the same spot, but they don't necessarily have the same allele. So here we have our two homologous chromosomes that have the same genes because they're the same length, but the two colors indicate that they came from the two different parents, and they may have different alleles for each of those genes. Excellent. All right, so now let's look at this in relationship back to meiosis. So let's look at this question. So you guys have done the reading and all about meiosis and done some homework assignments about it. So let's look at this cell here, and let's figure out, based on this image, if we think it's haploid, diploid, or tetraploid. Excellent. So the majority of you think that this is diploid. Why did you guys pick diploid? Somebody want to share? Yeah. So, but why did you think that they were two copies of the same chromosome? Okay, so she was saying she counted the centromeres, that there are two chromosomes, and that she was saying that she knows that meiosis can only happen, and like only diploid cells can go through meiosis. And so since the cell had not gone through meiosis, it was a diploid cell. Did anybody use, which is true, only haploid cells cannot perform meiosis, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but that's something true. Did anybody use anything else to kind of have an idea of whether these were two copies of the same chromosome or two different chromosomes? Right, so they're the same length. So since these chromosomes are the same length, then all the genes can line up and be present. If one was obviously shorter, it would be missing some of the genes present on the longer chromosome. So using the length is a great way to help identify that these are homologous chromosomes, which means that there's two copies of them, two long chromosomes, so it is a diploid cell. So yes, there's lots of different pieces of information you can use to approach the question. Excellent. So now let's look at the next cell, the one after meiosis 1. So let's look at this again. So is this haploid or diploid? So talk with, think about it for yourself, and talk with your neighbors, and try to explain your reasoning to them. All right, so we have a little bit of a split. So let's talk about some things that you guys were looking at to make this decision. incision, and then you will have some more discussion in the colon. So, what were some things you considered in trying to decide whether it was haploid or diploid? Yes, Bella.
It gets replicated in it has a homologous pair within the replicated chromosomes, and then it is again to make the haploid cells. So in meiosis, when it's diploid.
Okay, so she's saying that she feels that after meiosis 1, it's still diploid because these ending cells are haploid, and that's definitely true. I'm going to kind of that space for a couple of here, right? So we have these haploid cells after meiosis 2. So she's saying it was diploid. Does somebody want to say why they thought it was haploid? So slightly more people said they thought it was haploid. Yes, Samir.
If you count the centromeres, there's only one per haploid, and also if it was diploid, I think there has to be like non-sister chromatids, and there's only 2 sister chromatids in each of those.
So Samir was saying that she counted centromeres, and there's one centromere, so she would determine that this was one chromosome, and so then she realized that these individual pieces were sister chromatids. All right, so I'm not going to say which is right or not. I'm going to let you guys discuss this again. Well, let's use these pieces of information. So there's 4 consensus that this is haploid.